the difficulties of doing political work in the United States is the fierceness of the anti-Marxism. This is a hangover, if you like, of the McCarthyism period, and it's a hangover that has never gone away. And Walter Rodney, in one of his essays, talked about this, and he wrote as follows. I thought that it was very interesting. He says, one knows Marx is absurd without reading it, and one does not read it because one knows it is absurd. One glories in one's own ignorance because it is fashionable in the United States to glorify that state of ignorance. So that when, for example, Donald Trump loves to go on about how the socialists and the communists and the cultural Marxists have taken over the Democratic Party. When he says that, of course, there are certain people who immediately jump and kind of say, yeah, we have to stop those people because they're evil people. And this was, of course, the McCarthy tradition. But then for those of us who are kind of working a bit with Marx, then this kind of question of the hostility and the glorification of ignorance about Marx, while at the same time absolutely accepting that it is absurd. This is a really kind of difficult problem. How to bring Marx into the mainstream is a real challenge, and I've been struggling most of my life to do that. And I think it's extremely interesting that to this day I've never really been able to get any kind of reaction from mainstream media, mainstream discussions at all. I've tried to write an op-ed piece occasionally for the New York Times, always dismissed. Anything that smacks of Marx or Marxism is immediately dismissed in the mainstream media. I never will get anywhere at all. Now, this is kind of a little strange because, and here I'm afraid I'm going to have to assert some bragging rights, because I did do what I said I was going to do in the 1970s onwards, which is to try to create a literature which was significant. And it's not just me, but others were also creating a literature. And we created, if you like, a whole corpus of literature which affected geography, not only affected geography, but it also affected disciplines like sociology and political science and all the rest of it, anthropology. It certainly influenced them. So we did work very hard at that. There are these indices of citations and so on, and I have over 320,000 citations, far more than almost everybody else in much of the social sciences. If you do a citation kind of index and the social sciences, and these have come out, you find that I'm on the sociology index, I'm on the economics index and so on, because I get a lot of attention. So it's not as if my work is unknown. In fact, my work is pretty widespread. People refer to it a lot, not always positively, of course. A lot of the citations are very negative, saying that I'm absurd and an idiot for saying certain things. So yeah, that's true. But on the other hand, you would have thought that in this country that academics with the kind of citations and indexes and so on that has been achieved by not only me but by others working in this field would command a certain kind of attention in the mainstream media. But the answer is no. There's a ceiling there in which what's called repressive tolerance operates. That these medias, these groups like MSNBC and so on, and other groups of that sort, they all kind of like to think they're liberal and open and all the rest of it. but they are very much characterized by what's called repressive tolerance. That is, they're tolerant and really talk about their tolerance all of the time, but there are certain walls beyond which you cannot go. And one of the walls you cannot go beyond is one in which you actually would embrace Marxism and you would embrace what Marx had to say. And I'm still involved in this battle, if you like, to try to make Marx more comprehensible, more available for the mass of the population by writing the companions and engaging in the collective teaching and so on. But it's a perpetual battle.